A warm welcome back to the teaching series, The Jesus That John Knew. Thank you so much for being with me again. And you know, we are moving on in our teaching into, I think, what's going to become somewhat more esoteric ground. We've gone through what I think is, by any logic, is we have to see as a real watershed moment in Jesus' teaching. Certainly it's the portion of scripture that is taken by each one of the evangelists, and I'm referring of course to the feeding of the 5,000. And we've reached a point of crisis. We've reached a crisis because of course there were this huge crowd, this great swathe of popularity, this popular movement towards Jesus, because the crowd were drawn by the physical promise of bread. And having seen the stuff, if you like, having seen what Jesus could do for them, they gravitated towards him. But then the implication began to dawn on them that it wasn't so much about this physical bread, but that Jesus was pointing towards something more esoteric. He was pointing not towards just a satisfying of their immediate need for food, but he was talking about something that had to do with a divine food, a divine, a mysterious provision, if you like. And that rather than these signs pointing to something outward, they were turning towards something inward. And this created something of a crisis, because people obviously, as we've seen in the text, have now begun to draw back. And we want to jump into our story in John chapter 7, because in John chapter 7 we meet Jesus in a very interesting place. So let's go straight to text and read the text, and I'll just talk to you as we move through it. John chapter 7 then, and verse 1. After this Jesus went about in Galilee, and he wouldn't go about in Judea, because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now the Jews' feast of the booths was at hand. Now this is a very significant feast, and we're going to certainly want to talk to this, because remember that Jesus' popularity has plummeted. There's this sense amongst the disciples that said, listen, we didn't really sign up for this. This is much too high a price for us to pay. We get the idea of coming to get something from you, but we're not quite sure as we're really signing up for the idea of wanting to suffer with you. We're not really quite getting that. So there's this pulling away, and Jesus has made the powerful point to them that unless the Father draws them, that nobody can come to me. No one at all can come to me. And now we come to this Feast of Booths, as we're speaking about. And there are these three great feasts: the Passover, the Pentecost, and Tabernacles, or Booths as it's called. And now the Feast of Booths was the feast. It was the feast of the foreigners, the feast of the foreign pilgrims, if you like. And it was a very significant feast, because what would happen at that time would be that it was known as the ceremony of the 70 bullocks. And what would literally happen is each of those bullocks that would be sacrificed would represent one of the 70 nations. And it was a ceremony of the outpouring, literally of the outpouring, they called it. So it was very much depicting, unconsciously so, the participants were depicting the dawning of the age of the Spirit, of course. And intriguingly, what would happen is you would have the Levites who would muster together for this ceremony, and there would be the bullocks that would be prepared, and they'd be all ready to be made the burnt sacrifices of. But they would begin their journey, and the ceremonial procession would commence after the cock had crowed 3 times. Now, of course, immediately you should be starting thinking to yourself, hold on, cock crowing 3 times, Peter's denial. Yes, absolutely. And the cock would crow 3 times. They would then take a trumpet blast. They would proceed 10 steps, take a trumpet blast, proceed 10 steps, take a trumpet blast, go another 10 steps, take a trumpet blast. Now, very interesting picture, of course, because Jesus will say to Peter, won't he, after the denial, Peter, do you love me? Yes, of course I love you, Lord. Trumpet blast. Peter, do you agape me? Yes, of course I do, Lord. Trumpet blast. Peter, do you really love me? Yes, of course I do, Lord. Why are you asking me this? And it's almost as though at that moment when Jesus speaks to Peter, there's a kind of undoing of the denial that Peter spoke 3 times. But here is this interesting picture of this cock crowing, and then these 10 steps, which almost seem to me to kind of be hammering in the nail of saying, I will not let you down. I will keep your commandments. I will obey your law. And this trumpet blast, which is going to reverberate around the story to say, you can't live in this way. You might think you can, but you can't. But nonetheless, they march then out through the court of the women, and that's quite important, past the beautiful gate. And here's what they're singing: this is the way of the Lord. This is the way of the Lord. And of course, they're gathering up all these outcasts, if you like, as they come through, and then they come back into the court, and in the court then they have all these huge great sacrifices are being prepared, and from the well they've taken from the well the water, and then the water is outpoured onto the sacrifice, and whoosh, the whole thing goes up in this amazing enactment or prefiguring, if you like, of the dawning of the age of the Spirit. So kind of booth is a very important time. You have all these, everybody is sleeping in the streets, they're sleeping up on the roofs, all these tents everywhere, and people, they're remembering the time when they lived in the wilderness. And now, so this feast is upon us. So here we are again then. Now the Feast of Booths was at hand, and so his brothers said to him, leave here and go to Judea. And now listen to this: leave here and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may also see the works that you're doing. Now watch this. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Well, now you could argue, you could think to yourself, okay, well that's an interesting thing to say, and it's a fair point. If we're going to promote the gospel, if we're going to move this ministry forward, Jesus, well, don't keep it to some sort of parochial gospel way back here in Galilee. Go to the big stage. If you're talking to us here in England, you might say, don't just tour the provinces, take this show to the West End. Or if don't spend your time touring all the little dairy counties. Go to Broadway, do it big, go to the biggest stages there are. And there's a logic to which you could say, oh, okay, I get that, but you need to read on, because there's something very interesting. Watch what they say. John makes the note. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Watch. For not even his brothers believed in him. And that raises you begin to see the tension, don't you? That there is this sense of which Jesus is doing these incredible things. Everybody was good with Jesus just doing magic tricks. Everybody was good with Jesus just doing miracles. I'm being a little flippant, but I'm being flippant to make a point. But it's when the point of those miracles becomes apparent to people that Jesus isn't just in the business of doing miracles for the sake of doing miracles, but those miracles are pointing to something deeper, something beyond. Then immediately people struggle. And they struggle because we're going to see increasingly as we move into the text that the differentiation we need to make is not between what we Christians classically talk about when we talk about lost and saved. We need to move past that. That's not what you're going to see. What you're going to see is the difference between the awake and the asleep. You're going to see the difference between the conscious and the unconscious. And these people who are frankly unconscious, even though they are in his presence, they don't believe. Now watch. So Jesus says, my time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me. And it hates me because I testify that its works are evil. You go to the feast. I'm not going up. I'm not going up to the feast, for my hour has not yet fully come. Now, I want you to note something. Jesus has been very clear here. He said, the world cannot hate you. It can't hate you. Now, before you breathe a sigh of relief, let me just warn you about something. When we get across to John chapter 15 and around the 18th verse, we're going to read, why are you surprised that the world hates you? Of course it hates you, because it hates me. But at this point in the text, the brothers, the disciples, if you like, are still very much of the world. The world loves its own, And when we talk about the world, we really have to be careful that we understand we're not talking about people that go to church and people that don't go to church. I say it again, we've got ourselves ever so confused about this because our starting point is just completely wrong. Don't think in terms of people that are lost and people that are saved. Individualism, this separation, is something that is the very essence of the world. That's what the world does, and we're going to have to pull back from that, and we're going to have to reframe that. Now, please understand this. We're talking about the conscious and the unconscious. We're talking about not the lost and the saved. We're talking about the awake and the asleep. And so long as you are unconscious, so long as you believe in individualism, you believe in form, you believe in separation, you believe in an individual identity, you are of the world. And because you, me, us, the church especially, is of the world cannot hate it. The world only hates that which is not of it, and that which is not of it is that which is, it doesn't believe in separation. It believes only in essence, in union, in oneness. And I fear I have to hold back a bit on this, because this teaching is very, very important, and it's something we're going to have to get very clear about. Let me leave it like this. It will cause us terrible trouble if we start to think in terms of God being a Christian. Now, I know that sounds like a very radical thing to say, but we need to stop thinking like that, because it is profoundly unhelpful. Because what it does is it compounds our sense of separation, it compounds our sense of individualism, it compounds our sense of therein we're out, or we're out therein, whatever you might like to say. The world as far as Jesus is concerned, is the unconscious world. The world as far as Jesus is concerned is the asleep world. The world as far as Jesus is concerned is the world that is consumed with form. The world as far as Jesus is concerned is the world that is concerned with individualism. The other world to which Jesus refers, the spirit people to which Jesus is calling out to, be it the woman at the well, be it the courtier whose son is dying, be it the invalid who is there languishing at the pool of Bethsaida. The spiritual people are those who are awake. The spiritual people are those who are conscious. The spiritual people are those who see essence and not form. The spiritual people are those who see oneness, not separation, who see unity, who see union and not individualism. And it's a much wider discussion. It's a much broader brush that we are painting with. It really is a much broader brush. And I know that's going to get us into all sorts of problems, but please just trust me on this. Our theological perspective, this narrowness that we have in our theology, is simply unhelpful. He's the God of all, or he's the God of no one at all. He died for all, or he died for none at all. But I'm over pushing the point at the moment. But as we move forward, I really will come at this with a bit more gusto. But his point at this stage is to say, my time has not fully come, but your time has come. It's always your time. And there we are in this moment, always looking for, oh, when I can do this, oh, when I've got that, oh, when I've qualified, oh, when I've got my degree, oh, when I've got myself sorted out, oh, when I've done this. No, Jesus is saying, it's always your time. It's always your time. And never could something be any more clear than that. And after this, the Bible said he remained in Galilee. But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, he also went up, not publicly, but in private. The Jews were looking for him at the feast, saying, well, where is he? And there was much muttering about him among the people. While some said he's a good man, others said, no, he's leading the people astray. Yet for the fear of him, no one spoke openly of him. Now, of course, in our next show, we'll see that Jesus comes into the feast and he'll begin to make some pronouncements. But for now, let's just leave that hanging there. This confusion around, who is this man? Why does he speak this way? What's his agenda? What's he up to? But Jesus wants to leave us with the sense of saying, my time hasn't fully come. It's always